I'm Annie,
And I'm Leah.
and this is Lactation Business Coaching with Annie and Leah, where we talk about the smart way to create a compassionate and professional private practice.
Let's dive in.
Well, hey there, Leah.
Hey, Annie, how are you doing?
I'm good. It's a new year, which means for my insurance clients, new deductible fun and good times with the Aetna billing, but it's all right. I'm working my way through it. I'm trying to be, zen about it and give myself grace and be nice to myself in this whole process. So, how about you?
Oh, man. It sounds like we're in a lot of the same place. I know it's always the new year. It feels like, well, Aetna always changes things in the new year anyway, or the billing. The coding seems to change every year, but January always just feels like, yeah, so full of like all the things that we need to adjust and change. And I feel like that's what most of my extra or lack thereof extra time has been focused on. But like you, I'm really this year trying to take a more relaxed approach and like just remember that, like, what are the things that are most important to me, and like coming back to those and really trying to focus on what am I doing to de-stress. Like, constantly I'm thinking about that all the time. Like, okay, this is really amping me up. Okay, what am I going to do to de-stress? What am I going to do to de-stress, Lots of hot baths have been taken in January, lots of walks, lots of deep breathing, all the things to just keep it as low key as possible because my body is saying, please don't stress us out anymore.
I hear that. I've been doing more exercise classes than
Yes.
I have been doing. And that has actually I was reading about exercise is like, you don't want to trigger cortisol, like, especially at my age. And like what you're looking at is like, you don't want to push yourself. Like I used to love to do those, I'm going to totally just kill myself and be exhausted and feel great and everything hurts. And I'm like, no, that's actually not what I should be doing because that's going to increase my cortisol. So looking for exercise that feels challenging, but also feels good. And so I have
Yes.
found that. And that's been really great going to bar 3 studio classes. And it's so awesome. But it's like, I feel like at the end, I feel that endorphin rush. I feel tired. Like I feel like I've done something, but throughout, I never feel like I'm like, I can't do this. I just feel like
Yes.
I have that more of that, this is hard and I'm going to keep going because it feels good to keep going.
Yeah, not
So,
like you're just exhausting yourself and gonna crash at the end of it. Yes.
and I
I'm
feel
so
like this
glad.
is like a metaphor for our
I
topic today,
know,
letting go of
right?
the outcome. Like,
It does really feel like we're just bleeding right on into that.
so we're talking today about letting go of the outcome. And what that means, as Leah and I were brainstorming this episode, is just the idea that our clients are the ones who are going to determine the path that we're taking, not us. And the thing that I was told when I first became a lactation consultant was I can't want it more than they want it, whatever it is.
Mhm.
And so having seen that playing out in practice, it is a big part of the job is managing my own expectations about
Yeah.
or my own wishes about what's going to happen. What does that look like for you, Leah?
Yeah, this has definitely been something through my whole journey that I've had to keep working on because it is, I feel like sometimes we just get so emotionally invested, and, we might be so excited that, like, I think, if they follow this care plan, I just really feel like things are going to go well. And then the care plan that we came up with together ends up not working out well, or not being something that they, once they started it, felt like they could continue, or something changes for them. And it's like, oh, I really felt like we were going to head in this direction, and then the path turns for them, and it's becomes this kind of like emotional event for you, because like you kind of have this vision of how this will all play out, because we kind of have to do that. We kind of have to think through, okay, if they do this and we do that, da, 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 this is how I might expect it play out. Obviously, we're all going to be watching and seeing what happens, but it's like, "Well, okay, now my brain has to do a 180 here and, like, maybe be guiding them in a completely different direction," or realizing that the journey has changed for them and, like, being able to support them through that, and it is hard to get really disconnected because then I feel like we don't show up the same if you're just like, "I am a robot and like, I'm gonna disconnect all emotion from this situation." But I really have leaned on some teachings, I think, from my time in the Leche League with it's very remember people talking about, like, "This is not your baby, this is not your baby, this is not your baby," which is really helpful because I'm like, "This is their journey, it's not my journey. I'm just here as, like, the path, like, guider. Where you wanna go, I'll show you kind of that direction and what that path might look like," you know? Not my journey, not my baby, and that really is something that I've leaned on quite a bit, but it still is it can be so emotional sometimes, especially when, things aren't going as planned and or something else comes up for the family and their, hopes and dreams not are kinda crushed, and then you're like, "Wow, this is emotional."
Definitely. I feel like there's multiple reasons that can happen. So there's like there are the times where you're like doing like what we talked about in that deeper dive with Susan Howard about watchful waiting, where you're doing
Yeah.
watchful waiting and like you don't know where this is going to go. We're just kind of paying attention to what's happening. And in those situations, I feel like it's easiest for me to not
Yeah.
invest in what the outcome is going to be. And then there's the cases where you've made a recommendation, and then for whatever reason, the parents are not following that recommendation, and it could be for multiple reasons, like, it could
Yeah.
be, like, it's just logistically challenging, or their doctor told them something else, or or whatever it is,
Yeah, there's so
they
many
followed other
situations that come up.
advice. There's so many other advice, and, like, I feel like in those cases, that's where it's hardest for me because I feel like, "No, I really worked really hard to learn everything I needed to learn to present you with something, and I also tried really hard to make it something that you could implement and that would fit into your life, and so that's where, I really when they come back to me and they're like, "Okay, I didn't try anything you talked about, and I'm still struggling," to really just take myself out of it, like,
Yeah.
very consciously and deliberately, like,
Yeah.
"Okay, let me just treat these people like brand new, like
We're starting
fresh.
over. Yeah.
We have to start over,
Start
and
over
I
fresh
have to
again.
start over."
Yeah.
The ones that really, like, make me sad are the ones where we had a plan, we followed the plan, and then something like an illness or
Yes, or like they
emergency,
get mastitis or yeah, I've had a few
and then it's
families where,
like,
like, the
oh,
whole family comes down with COVID or something, so, like, all their
yeah.
appointments had to get canceled and everything got derailed and mom's milk supply tanked, and it's just like, "No." Like,
And
this
those are the
can't
cases where I feel like I'm grieving with them,
Yes.
and I've even, shared that with like, said, like, I'm
This
sad
is
about this
so
too, like,
challenging.
this is
Yeah.
really heartbreaking, and
Yeah.
try to, like, validate them. You worked so hard, and I see what happened, and I do find, like, it is really powerful. This is something I was told not to do in the Lecture League, but, like, I
Yeah.
do it in my private practice, is to really tell people, like, you really did everything that you could, and none of this is your fault. And sometimes you just
Yeah.
really have to say that. I've had
Yeah.
people, like, I say that, and they're like, "Thank you for saying that." 'Cause
Yes.
they do believe that, and they just need to hear somebody else let them off the hook.
Yeah, I always tell parents one of the things I like to remind them is like, if the mom's just like really beating herself up, like, I've tried this, I've tried that, I did this, I did that. She's just like feeling the weight of like, I feel like I've done everything that everybody's told me. And I'm like, the issue is this is a two-person event. And like, you can do your part 100% perfect, but the baby also brings their 50% of this, and, like, we don't have control over everything that they can or will ever be able to bring to the table, and that's really hard truth to face, is like, yes, we can try, all the techniques we have to help the baby bring their 50% of the job, but they might never be able to get past 30%, and that might mean that what we had hoped would be the outcome won't be the outcome, and validating that, like, yes, you did everything, and then, like, unfortunately, your little one couldn't do all the part that they needed to do, and I think sometimes that really helps them release some of that, like, parent guilt of like, "Oh, if I had just done more, if I had just done this," and I'm like, "You could have done 1,000 things more, but you can't control some aspects of this are outside of our control." And I've found that parents have really felt a sense of relief with that and knowing that, like, that validation of like, yeah, you really did all of your part to the best of your ability, and that's awesome and amazing. And also, it really sucks when we don't have control over all of it, and that's
Yeah.
it's
And you and
devastating.
I yeah. And you and I both have teenagers and you also have adult children. And I'm
Yes.
like, this is a metaphor for
Yeah.
parenting. Like, spoiler alert, it's just going to keep
Oh.
on being like this.
And it's
Just
so, like,
FYI.
especially when they get to be adults because, we've really taken the whole, like, they're adults now, like, letting them make their own decisions, and that is so
Ugh,
hard because it's like,
yes.
we're doing all the guidance and giving them information and da, 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 and then they make this other choice and you're like, why did you do that? But then I'm also like, but this is your life. This is not my life. This is your life. Like, I love you and I'm here, but not my life. And that's so hard. It's very similar to this other part of letting go. Of course, certainly with your own kids, it's even harder. But
And
but it
that's
is
like
so
the
true. A practice of letting go.
And that's like what we really like sometimes when I think about what is my actual job, like what is the most important thing I'm here to do? The most important thing I'm here to do is to teach parents that they have what it takes for their baby to trust them. And that's like,
Yes.
that's what it really comes down to, that whatever is happening around feeding and around lactation and around all of it is like, we are building that platform of trust so the parents
Hmm.
can trust themselves and the parents can help their babies trust them with that healthy attachment and all of that. And that's why, in terms of when I'm talking about the work that I do or like presenting it on my website, for example, I really stayed away from like, I know how to solve your problems. Like, I'll talk about like, I can help you with these problems. I cannot solve them and not
Right?
making those promises. And I remember when, like, a while ago, I did a lot of like trainings on marketing for online businesses, and they were all like, you have to identify the problem and then you have to agitate the problem and then you have to provide that you are the solution to the problem.
Yes.
And that has always just like never sat
That
right
doesn't
with
work
me.
for
Like, no,
lactation.
like, what am I going to be like? Okay, you've identified that like you can't feed your baby because you don't have enough milk. Well, let me agitate that and tell you that, like,
No.
guess what? Your baby could die if you don't feed your baby.
Oh my
Okay,
god.
but I could like save your baby from dying. It's like, that's really what like that's
It
the end
does.
goal is what you're really saying. It's like, but even like on a smaller level, like making promises, like, I don't know,
Yeah,
like
about, like,
if
resolving nipple pain with your
right.
five-step approach to latching or something like that. It's like, you can't guarantee any of those outcomes, and also, you're only the guide, you're not the doer of the things. The doer
Mm-mm.
of the things is the family, and they get to choose what things they decide to do. I think also kind of when you think about messaging, it will also help solidify in your own brain what your role is. And help you manage these outcomes that we can't control, which obviously we can't control any outcome, but it really helps you manage, I guess, how you would approach that in your own mind because you know what your role was and you've provided that message to your client, you've provided that message to your own brain. And it really, I think that piece of it is so powerful.
Yeah, and just like what you said is like, it starts with the very first encounter that they have with us of what's actually happening, and we are telling them the outcome is not what I'm here for. I'm
Right.
here for you. I'm here for you and your baby. I'm here for this relationship that you're this new relationship that you have, and I'm here to read this I wish I could attribute this quote to somebody, but you wanna be the guide on the side, not the sage
Yes.
on the stage, and,
Yes. I've
like,
seen I heard that before too.
I love that one. It's like, I'm here next to you. I'm right down there with you. I cannot tell you what to do and I cannot promise an outcome. And then for me to have that energy of like, and the outcome is not what matters to me. And I tell that to people like, I'm going to recommend this intervention for your baby, but I'm also here if you choose not to do it. I'm here
Yes.
for you either way. And we are going to be on the topic of messaging. So my little segue into this part, but we are doing a deeper dive into messaging at the end of February with messaging expert Dr. Michelle Mazur. She has a PhD in communications, and she wrote a book called The Three-Word Rebellion that is all about finding your message. So it's such good stuff. Her way of talking about teaching messaging is so applicable and compatible with our ethical obligations as
Mhm.
healthcare providers. Like, so I'm really excited to have her come in and talk with us in depth about like how can you differentiate yourself in your messaging when it does feel like it's like sometimes I'm like, I don't know, my message is I'm in Queens and I take your insurance. Like, what more do you want to know?
What else do you need to know? I am so excited about that talk because I feel like everything else out there, like you said, is feels very predatory and it feels very like, just trying to win the visit, like from a, very monetary, make more money. I just want it to be attracting the people that truly want the service that I can provide. And I know a clear message would do that because obviously, nobody can see everybody and nobody's a good fit for every single person out there. And by having that really concise and clear messaging, you'll attract the people that will be your people, the people that will really get you because you've been really open and concise with like your vibe, and you'll bring those people with that want those vibes right into your practice. And I think that's where that messaging can be so powerful. But like bringing it back to this idea of letting go of outcomes, I think it too shows them, like you said, that we're like not here for just end result. We're here for you're got a journey ahead of you, and like we're gonna go down this path with you. And I think that helps to have the messaging clear about that, and I'm, like, already thinking, like, "Oh, I think there's things that I'm gonna wait till after the messaging talk to change anything on my website," but I'm certain there are gonna be things that I'm gonna wanna shift and change, and after we have that conversation, I'm really excited about it.
Me too. I want to like jump in and make changes just based on us talking about it right
I
now,
know.
but I'm also
I
going to
know.
wait until after we talk to her. I do feel pretty good that I don't think I have anything on my website that would be considered bad, but I know there's plenty of things that could be better.
Yeah.
And then taking it back to kind of our journey as lactation consultants along with these clients, I tend to be like, I'm a very much like, just like move on, think about the future. If it's in the past, don't dwell on it. But you are very different from me in this way.
No.
And I should be more like you because you're really good about creating these like moments of like honoring these difficult cases that you've had. And you've got a really great tangible thing that you do. Can you tell us about your ritual for this?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I am a very empathetic person, and I do know about myself that I get, like, very just feeling what that other person might be feeling and getting a little too tied up into that, and I've worked very hard, lots of therapy, working on separation and things, and something that was really helpful for me was to have something, like you said, that kinda just honors it and then, like, allows me to have a moment to say, like, "Okay, now I'm letting this out of my head, like, I've thought about it enough, I'm moving on," and this little ritual that I do kind of, like, sets it off into the world. I'm like, "Okay." So, what I did was I got a little box that I just had randomly from probably Amazon shipment or something, and I decorated the outside just coloring it with all different colors that I felt were representative of, just happiness and joy and caring. So, you can kinda see if you looking at the video that we have, I have that box, and then what I did on the inside is I wrote all kinds of words that I would like to have that person know. Like, if I just could never talk to them again, this is the words that I would want surrounding them, like, "You're supported, you're cared for, I release, your outcome, you're the perfect parent for your baby, the choices you make are the perfect choices for your family at this time with the knowledge and information that you have and the experiences that you've already had." Like, things like that, I just wrote it all over the inside of the box, and I cut a little hole in the top, and when I have somebody that I'm just like, "I've gotta get this situation or, the outcome out of my head and give it to them and let it all go," I'll just on a piece of paper, maybe write their initial or something that reminds me of them. And I just fold it up and then I put it in the box and I kind of just like take a deep breath with that and say, okay, now they're off into the world and I don't ever, not that I don't ever have to think about them, but I'm not going to hold on to it anymore. I'm like going to let it go and they might still come across my mind and then I'll go, oh yeah, they're in the box. Like they have all the good things around them. And it's been such a powerful thing for me because it also I think it really honors how I process things because I'm different. Like you said, you can kind of say like, "Oh, well, that was in the past, moving on," and I don't process like that, you know? And it's actually like built into this like I have another box which is like my life box when I'm just like, I got to let go of this in life. Trust me, there are so many Etnas in that box. Etna is written like 4,000 times in that box. But again, it's just been something that has been a really nice little processing, and I'm a very like, physically process things, and so, I don't know, it was just something I randomly came up with one day. I'm just like, "I just need to be put these people in a box and, like, just know that everything's okay." And it's really helped.
It's a great example of what they talk about in the book Burnout, and we'll put a link to the book in the show notes about
Yeah.
how to complete the stress cycle. And so, knowing what works best for you for completing that stress cycle, like for me, what works is like to just physically let myself decompress and also like hugs are really helpful for me for
Yes, that
completing the stress cycle.
oxytocin.
Oxytocin from that 10-second hug. I'll even, tell my husband, I'm like, "I just, like, need, like, a little
Yes.
bit longer. Just
Yeah,
5 more
just don't
seconds,
let go,
please."
don't let go.
And those things really help me just release it from my body because I tend to, like I'm really good at, like,
Mm,
compartmentalizing in my mind, but, like, if I don't let it go, it does stay in my body
yes.
and affects me. And so being mindful, at least that how you let go of that outcome, how you complete that stress cycle and find closure for yourself is going to look different for everyone. But it is
Yeah,
important to find out what really works for you. And there's
yeah,
another book, The Resilient Practitioner, that really goes into a
yes.
lot of detail about all the different ways that we could have these uncertain outcomes, or we just don't know, or sometimes we never know what's going to
Yeah, those are
happen.
the
And
hardest
so,
ones.
yep, and you have to, like, make that for yourself. You have to say, "Okay, like, I sent a follow-up email, I heard nothing back from them. Everything's either great or they hate me." It's one of those 2, and so saying, "Okay, one idea that I do and that I think is really helpful is to look back and say, okay, let me reflect on how I showed up for
Yeah,
this family and let me see, okay, if they love me, let me like celebrate the things that I feel like I did well. And if I have that feeling of like, what if they hate me? Well, let me reflect and say, where are some areas where I can do
yeah,
better? Because you can always find a place where you can do
yeah,
better. Like it's no
yeah,
reflection on your skill level to think about how you can
yeah.
do things
None
better.
of
Because
us
you
are perfect. None of us, like, end of story, period. Nobody's gonna go in a consult and do it perfectly. So it is so helpful to have that, like, "What could I learn from this?" And then also, "What could I celebrate from this?" And then, "How can I release this?" Yeah,
Yep.
I think that's such a good mentality to have, and like you said, I think I've said this in a podcast not that long ago, but I've been really working with this, like, idea of imagination that, like, so much of our worry, so much of our stress comes from things that we are imagining. And, like, so when I have that thought, like, "Oh my gosh, they probably hate me because I remember I said this and I could have said it differently, and that's probably the one thing that they thought about the whole entire time and never called me back because of it," how our brains do. And so I will challenge myself to say, like, can I think of one if that's gonna be the thing that's, like, feels so big in my head, like, can I think of one other but positive thing? And I'll just, like, make myself think, well, like, I wore deodorant that day, so I didn't stink in their house, like, that might be the only positive thing that I could come up with, but it might be like, I smiled and I showed up the best I could that day, or, like, I felt like I really gave them a lot of information, or I really opened their eyes to other possibilities. I mean, it could be endless, but, like, if you're in that place of, like, "I just can't let go of this person, I'm just spinning in negative, like, I bet this has happened, I bet that's happening," especially when you don't know the outcome, because I think that's, like, where it really gets tough, is, like, just see if you could challenge yourself to come up with some one positive thing that you could even if it's just, like, the barest minimum, like, "I showed up on time," It could be
Yeah.
something like that, that you had.
And
That was
make a
possible.
list at the time when you're at a time when you're feeling good about yourself. Make a list of 10 things that you are like, right now, these are 10 things that I feel like I really do well. And then if you're like in the depths of despair, you're like, I don't do anything well. Be like, wait,
I have
past
these 10
Annie
things.
made a list and I'm going to make myself pick something off this list. And I'm going to remind
Yes.
myself that there's a time in my life where I thought I was good at this.
Yeah.
And if it was true then, it's probably true now. So,
100%. I love
yeah.
that. And just remember, like, all these things that we're talking about doing as people, Annie and I have been doing this for 10 plus years, working with families. These are the things that I wish somebody had told me on year 1 and 2 to start doing then. It's only been in the last couple of years when burnout really set in, and I keep thinking, like, if I had learned some of these strategies long ago, would I have not felt quite so burnt out, not felt
Mhm.
quite so burdened by 10 years of people that I'm like, the weight is all on my shoulders. If I had been actively releasing and actively challenging my imagination on these outcomes, those kinds of things, I'm like, oh. So to everyone starting out, and even those that are been in this a long time alongside Andy and I, it's like, don't forget that you gotta protect yourself from burnout. I almost feel like it's like wearing a raincoat. You just have to put it on every day, all day long, so that you guys can keep being the awesome LCs that you are and the beautiful people that you are, just giving this world so much. We have to make sure we keep taking care of ourselves, putting that protective layer on in all these different ways that Annie and I have been describing today.
Absolutely. I'm gonna have to do some of that for myself today because I've had a tough month, but I love having these conversations. If you enjoy these conversations, come to a deeper dive. They're just like this, only you're there too, which makes it better.
So much
And
better.
we have some great experts lined up for this first part of 2023. You can come just to one. You can sign up for the deeper dive subscription, or you can head over to our Patreon page, and we have the link in the show notes, and you can support the podcast and get some fun bonuses too, which include the deeper dives. So there's kind of like multiple ways that you can like get involved and show us just that you're there and you're listening. And even just sharing this episode, if it resonated with you, tell somebody about it. We love this community. We love hearing from you and we love seeing your faces at the deeper dives. So we hope you're there.
Yes, definitely. We'll see you guys all very soon.
And until then, bye, Leah.
Bye, Annie. Thanks for listening. To learn more about our monthly deeper dives and how to support our podcast for as little as $1 a month, visit lactationbusinesscoaching.com. Don't forget to leave us a rating and hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode.